Hey everybody, it's me, finally. Welcome back. I think today we're going to try to get back into this VFR and see what's going on with them carbs. You know, it's got that kind of flat spot at very light throttle positions, so you're pretty much into the primary circuit or the slow circuit at that point at a higher RPM, so that would kind of indicate that there would be a high vacuum situation, ergo the slow circuit. So anyway, let's get right to it right now. I took the Liberté and took everything off camera. All right, so like I said, Liberté of removing everything, and now we're going to get into the carbs themselves. And I did this because, you know, it's pretty mundane taking that shit off. So I have the cover off the air box. You know, you don't even need to really do that 100% to take these carbs out. But I like to do it because this gives me a nice flat surface to set these on once they're out, and I drain them, and that's all good. We're going to have to do all of that because we're going to have to pop the... actually, I don't know if we're going to have to do that. Maybe we will. I don't know. We're definitely going to have to get into the slow screws, though, which gives you a little hint as to where I'm thinking a problem may lie, or the problem may lie, all right? Now, probably the most frequently asked question with V4 forums or Facebook pages or anything like that is to how to get these carbs out and then back in particular. Now today it's a little chilly out down here for Florida. It's like 50 something degrees. I don't know why I'm putting the camera out there. It's not like you can see the temperature, but we had a cold front come through and it's pretty chilly, so that means that rubber is going to be a little stiff, the carb holder rubber. Now normally I like it when my rubber is stiff, but in this case it's going to be maybe a little bit more of a challenge, but certainly not impossible. So essentially the first thing I would tell you is, if you're working on an old motor, any old motor that's carbureted, where you got to take the carbs out in a couple times to tune them or what have you, it's good practice anyway to change out the rubber carb holders, okay? They crack over time, you can get a vacuum leak, and then the thing will not run for shit no matter what you do. So these are new, of course, as I mentioned before, newer. So I'm not going to worry about those. Why am I doing this? We're going to go ahead and just take them out and put them back in at that time, and I'll show you how I do that, all right? Okay, this is a vent for the tank, so this is just going to lay here. These are the vents for the carbs. This guy, I designed it kind of so it just has a fitting here. I can take this off instead of having to reach in there. There's two T's that are vacuum T's that go between the 2 and 4 and 1 and 3, just like there is a fuel T, which of course this is a fuel one. And so this just ties in straight in on the vacuum side, and then there's a straight one that goes to the second or the front carbs for the vacuum, or I should say a vent. I'm sorry, not vacuum, vent. So we're just going to leave this sucker hang like it is. Get this off here for the fuel. Just let this hang right there. I doubt there's any significant amount of fuel. The thing's been sitting for so long, it's probably dried up, you know, as far as evaporation goes. We'll get that off, and then we'll loosen the band clamps. Take the throttle cables off the other side. That's pretty easy to do. You don't really have to have a tutorial on that. That's, you know, it's pretty simple. To get in here to adjust the slow screws at that time, we have to come up at an angle and reach across. You know, do a classic reach around and get at the slow screw for the opposite side. So for number 1 and number 2, I'm going to reach up through this side, and the other way, you know, the opposite side for number 3 and number 4, because we're looking at it as 1, 3, 2, 4. All right. So let me get that done, and then we'll come back to what I'm doing. All right, I'm going to just essentially put a towel here, a little pry bar, and pop these up on the 1 and 3 side, 1 and 3, just get them loose. See, the problem with V4s is you kind of have to get your head around this. You obviously have a situation like this, all right, where the carburetor ends that go into the rubber holders are obviously at an angle to each other, okay? And the carb holders are at that same angle. Well, they only line up perfectly when they are down in where they're supposed to be. But of course, when you get it down to the point, or you're prying it up from that point, it misaligns on one or both sides, depending on what you're doing with it at that particular time, or how you're disassembling it. So how you can get around that, especially if you have stiff ones, yeah, there we go, is you can loosen not only the band clamp that's on the carb side, which is really all I need to do on this one. More on that in a second. You can loosen on one of the two sets of cylinders, like for example the rears. You can loosen the other side of that band clamp on the lower part where the carb holder goes into the cylinder head. When you start to pry up, it's going to start to angle out with it and kind of cock. It actually may even come with it. It doesn't matter at that point. You reverse that process if you need to when you go to put them in. So two of them, you just put those carb holders in straight as they normally go, and you can even tighten the band clamps where it holds onto the cylinder head. On the other two, you can leave all of them loose, in particular the ones on the cylinder head side, and kind of cock that rubber carb holder just a little bit. In other words, splitting the difference of that misalignment on one side. So when you go to put it down, you'll see that this is not necessarily hitting in a spot where you don't want it to hit, like right up in here, which is where it's going to hit when we go to put it back in, because it's going to be up higher. It's going to be up this high instead of down there, because it's a V. All right, so what we do is you just leave that one loose and put it in a slight angle, again splitting that distance of the misalignment, and then as you put the whole thing down in, it'll bring that back in alignment and pop it down. That's another way you can do it. If you have newer carb holders, or if it's not 2 degrees outside, then you probably don't need to do that. And I haven't needed to do that in the last couple of times I pulled these off. But it's just something to mention. Now, as far as the band clamp goes, the clamps rather, I just wanted to mention that follow the service manual, because on certain V4s like the VFs, the old VFs, like the Magna, which is over there, the service manual will tell you to loosen the band clamps on one, or I forgot which carbs they are, on the carb side and the cylinder head side. So essentially you're leaving two of the rubber carb holders on the cylinder head. The other two come with the carbs. That's how they want you to take them out. That is not the case on this one. The case on this one is we just loosen, which is what I'm doing at least, is to loosen the band clamps only on the carb side, and then just pop these up, which is what I'm going to do right now. Now on the front side here is where the enricher cable goes. It's kind of stuck in back here somewhere. It's kind of hard to see, but it snakes around from up here on the handlebar, left handlebar, comes around at this angle like that and goes in and attaches to a point, to fixed point, and then the moving point is the actual lever. So there's a little there's a little screw, like a regular JIS screw, that holds that in place, which is very difficult to get to if you do have this bottom part of the air box on. So what I've done, and what I did in the past, is I changed that out to a little Allen, so I can get in there much more easily and loosen it. You can do it with a small bolt too, but I didn't have one. And I just take the Allen wrench and label it joke, because enricher, it's not too many letters for that little piece of tape. So yeah, so it's all ready to go. We'll pop that up, get the the enricher cable off of there, and I can pull the whole rack off. All right. Just wanted to mention that. If you haven't, I'd like to introduce you to Big Bertha. This is a screwdriver that my dad bought years ago that we used to pry many things. So it's only fitting. Actually, it should be over on Dad's tool bench. Maybe that's where I'll put it. Put Bertha over there. Maybe she'll live over there from now on. That would be more appropriate, because let's keep it in the family kind of thing. So I'm just going to reach in here and pop these up. Just give it a little torque and she'll come right up. Ugh. There it goes. Just pop it right up. Now we're free on the back, and a little bit more and we'll be free on the front. Ugh, there it goes. So a little twisting sometimes helps, but You know, as long as the band clamps are all loose, you're good. Now, when you're taking these band clamp screws loose, loosen them as far as you can without the screw coming out of the holder. You really want that ability for that band clamp to spread with the rubber, okay? Because otherwise that will tend to restrict it. All right, you can't see this. I'm going to go off camera here and we'll get this choke cable off and then pull this rack out. What you hanging up on there, Willis? Come on, you. There it goes. Throttle cable is hung up in there. All right. So now what you want to do is, and I recommend you do this on any carbureted motorcycle that you take off, either it's a single carb or a multi-carb. You want to do a visual inspection down inside these intake bores with a flashlight to make sure that something didn't fall down in there. There's some sort of a magnetic field that sucks anything in that's anywhere near it that's loose. I don't know if it's magic, or black magic maybe. I don't know if it's you know, something to do with the Earth's gravitational pull or the rotation of the universe. I don't know, but it's kind of like socks in a dryer. All right, if you put socks in a dryer, you're always going to come out with only one if you put two in. Well, in this case, if you have anything around here at all, it's going to go down into one of these. You're not going to see it, and you're going to start to motor up, and you're going to end up, you know, your piston's going to be slapping against a screw or something inside the cylinder head. So I'll do that off camera, and then we're going to do is stuff these with some paper towels to make sure that doesn't happen while it's exposed. We're over here on Dad's old bench, which is one of the uses I envisioned for it when I wanted to bring it down. And of course, Ichabod's over there having fun with his squeaky bone. He always gets animated when it's cooler out. He's definitely not a hot weather dog. Alright, so on this carburetor, it's kind of weird. The pilot screws, or the slow screws, go across the bottom like this and this. If you look at one of my original videos when I took these apart, I didn't even know what these were. I'm like, what the hell is that? I don't even know what those are. And then figured it out, of course. Which is what I meant before when I was... Did I say this before? I don't know. You take the side panels off because you got to kind of do a reach up from the opposite side to adjust these things. You don't get a straight shot on it, but they're slotted so you can get close enough with a long screwdriver. Now I'm going to take these out first because I mentioned in a much earlier video that I think I know what's wrong with this, and I actually may have done this. I'm not going to worry about screw count out, you know, as far as the number of turns, because I don't remember what these are at, and it doesn't matter because I've been fiddling it with for so much. If I find a problem, then I know I'm just going to set them for, I think the nominal is 2.5 turns, and I'll probably go to 3. Oh yeah. Hang on a second, and I'll be right back, and I'll explain my rationale. All right, I'm going to show you what I think is the problem here. This is the pilot screw, these particular carbs. All right. If you can see that, I'm going to zoom up on it a little bit so you can see it. Now that pilot screw is an assembly. Now this is extremely difficult to find in the parts fiche, but it is in there, and it's in it as an assembly. They don't break out these individual parts, and you can find these used on eBay. I'm going to show you a picture of one here in a minute. Now this is the way the service manual says it's supposed to go. You have this O-ring that seals it on the outside, a spring, and a washer. All right, now me thinking I was smarter than a Honda engineer, when I put this together originally, I went and added an O-ring to the end that you would typically see on a pilot screw. So this is how it was installed. I figured it would just double up, keeping this from leaking any vacuum to the outside. So I'm doing some research on this just by looking at the parts fiche and the parts manual and so forth. And again, naturally, this is what I said before. This O-ring is not supposed to be here because it has got the O-ring. Let me see if I can get that off. It has got the O-ring on the back side here. This is what seals it off. So it goes into the carburetor body, and that O-ring will seal this machine surface on that hole that I'm pointing at there with my scummy looking finger. And that's the O-ring again right there. All right. Now, why would that O-ring be causing me a problem? Well, the answer to that is I don't know, because I cannot find any port or anything inside here that would be blocking off. In other words, let's say you had some sort of an orifice that was back this way toward the outside of this, and that O-ring was on the inside. That would explain that pretty clearly. But if we go over to this one, which I have the float bowl off, you can see I have the pilot screw out. Pilot jet out. Now, I've talked about this before as far as tracing the circuits on these carburetors to figure out how things are going or how they're supposed to go to make sure they do it right. So now you see the inside of the pilot screw, the pilot jet orifice rather, and you can trace this circuit which goes here and then up to here, and then it goes up to here. Now this plug here is something I put in afterwards as an aid to machining, because they need to get at the back side this way to put these little tiny holes in, which are down in there. You see those holes that are kind of like 3 of them in a triangular shape, not the big one up front there. Those holes are the orifices, or at least one of them is, where the fuel comes out on the slow circuit. I verified that, by just putting some fluid down in there. In this case, I just put a little WD-40, it's, pretty benign, and then blew it through, and you can see it come through that, those holes. This, of course, is a vacuum port. So when you open this up, when you open this screw up to 2.5 turns or whatever you're setting it at, it opens up a vacuum port that allows that to draw that fuel up through there, okay? So that's the suction, and down there would essentially be the discharge on this particular setup. All right, and I think a lot of carbs, if not most, are the same way. Now again, I'm not sure why adding an O-ring on the inside there would cause a problem. Perhaps because that area inside where it seats is not designed for an O-ring. Maybe it gets kind of scrunched in there and partially blocks it off. I don't know. I don't know why it would cause that. So what I'm going to do, of course, is I'm going to take the O-rings that I added out of each one of these and remove them. So it'll simply be just as you see it here, only with a washer at the end of it where it's supposed to be. And I'm going to change the springs out too. I don't like these springs. They kind of bind up on the slow screw. And remember, this is again screw set A. It's an assembly. Let me show you what I mean by that. I'm going to show you the 2 spots where you can find it. Doing an internet search is one of them, but the other one is on the parts fish. Well, actually, first, let's take a look at the service manual to confuse yourselves and me even more. Of course, this didn't confuse me. I knew what the situation was, but this is the fuel, carburetor section of the factory service manual. The climber manual has no reference to this, so this is only in the factory service manual. As you can see, this is the pilot screw circuit drawing for the VFR750F for the 86 year. Let me bring that down a little bit for you. Now you can see this pilot screw looks similar, and it has the spring, the washer, and the O-ring on the inside as you typically would have. But if you look at that, that's a slotted head pilot screw. We do not have a slotted head pilot screw. We have that kind of weird pilot screw with that end piece that's got the little tab on it. Now I saw this when I originally put this back together. I knew that we did not have this setup and that it had the O-ring on the outside, which this doesn't show. It just shows the one O-ring here to seal this off, and I have seen that many times in other carburetors. I was just, second guessing the Honda engineers, I guess, and adding that O-ring on the inside. Maybe I was thinking at the time, well, they did it on this one, we'll do kind of a hybrid thing. Maybe that's the problem, I don't know. So we'll switch over to the parts fish now online. I'll show you what I'm talking about as soon as my freaking mouse decides to help us out. All right, so go back to the parts fish here. On the drawing, it's very, very difficult to find this. On this particular bike, it's on just the carburetor, not the carburetor assembly drawing. This guy right there is that fuel screw, that slow screw. It doesn't look like it, but that's what it is. So you have a screw, you have a spring, and a washer. Now to verify that, you go down to number 5, which is right here, and it says screw set A, and that's that 16016, etc. number, which I Googled, and I came up with this, which is a used part sale on eBay for that number. So this is probably a superseding number because that's ML7 and this is KR3. There may be a supercision to it. We can kind of check and see. I don't think that's the case though. But if we click on that, sometimes they'll show a supercision, but there is not. But it is definitely the same fuel screw, although it references it on the VFR 700 rather than the 750. But there's no question that's the fuel screw. Now this cap is like a security cap that you see on them, that anti-tamper, which has long been gone off of this one. But you can see on this screw here, you have the screw itself, which is here, the spring, and a washer, and the O-ring, which goes, on the outside here. You can see kind of the groove for it right there. The head's a little different, but that's pretty much the same screw. That would definitely fit into this one because the threads are right there, and then you have that area for the O-ring, and then the washer goes on the end here. So what I'm surmising by this is, in my summary, I guess, is that there must have been some sort of design change between maybe even during a model year of the VFR 750, the 86, or the RC24, because again, when we look at the service manual, we see this as definitely not the fuel screw that I have, but it is the fuel screw we're seeing on that eBay ad for sure. But you can see that we don't have it set up this way. We have an O-ring out here, which this one doesn't call for. So like I said, I'm not sure why it would make a difference to have two O-rings in there. I'm not sure. But I remember when I took it apart, there was no O-ring on the inside. It was just this outer one, as you can see right here. So I think that's the cause of the problem. So what I'm going to do off camera here is, I've already done this one and I'm working on this one now. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull all the other three float bowls off. I'm going to verify 100% that we have good flow through the slow circuit and the jets. The jets are relatively new. In fact, they're slightly larger. 38 is a stock. These are 40s. And we will just put these back with the way looks like the Honda engineers wanted, basically like that. We'll put them out at 2 3/4, maybe. Actually, I think I'll put them out at 3. Usually, you need a little bit more than what they were talking about in the factory because they set these things even at the time for whatever the EPA standards were to keep them as lean as possible, to pass those said standards. So that's what I'm going to do off camera, and then we'll get this back together, go over a couple of things, get them back on the bike, and fire it up, see how it is. Getting ready to put these back in. I just want to mention a couple things. You want to pay attention to the clocking of your band clamps if you're putting these back in after a teardown or something, because sometimes you just can't reach the screws unless they're clocked a certain way, especially on this side. They're going to be squeezed through in here, a screwdriver. So just keep that in mind. I also put a little silicone grease on the rubber. It helps get these things in. Now I'll line them up and we'll pop the back in, but the fronts will be mostly put in. Partially, but mostly. These are not very deep anyway as far as how far the end of the carburetors have to go in. So it's not much distance they have to travel, but still, we got to kind of get part of it in and then get the backside in and drive them home, All right, see if we can make sure they're all lined up. I can't see nothing. They're ready to go. All right, that's that one. One of these things you just got to kind of massage it in. Get them lined up partially on one, on the fronts, for example, on 2 and 4, and then. Now what I do also on these back ones is you can kind of reach in with a screwdriver and pry that rubber back a little bit to kind of start it over the edge, and then it'll pop right through. Usually I have to do that. On one of them at least. Usually one is going to hang up. Just work one, kind of work the other. I don't have usually too much trouble with these, but it's kind of cool today, so they're a little stiff. There, it wants to go there. This is the one that's hanging up on this side. It always does. right, that was that one. I'll work the other one in and it'll pop right in. There they go. And boom, down. All right, so you just kind of work them in that way. They're, like I said, they're a little stiff today because it's just a little cool. Kind of running a little weak today anyway because of the surgery I had. I don't have any restrictions, but I gotta pay attention to how I'm moving my left arm so I don't pull any stitches out or something from this pacemaker installation. But it was pretty nominal, because they didn't have to do any work on the wires, just the generator itself. All right, so that's in. I hope you got something out of that. I know it was hard to see, but just to explain what I did, I got the front ones in. This would be cylinders 2 and 4, all right? And it can kind of wiggle back and forth a little bit when you work the back ones in. There's enough flexibility to do that. And then when I was pushing this one down, you could see it was pulling the rubber with, actually this one, it was pulling the rubber down with it, didn't want to let it go. So you just reach in with a screwdriver and just give that a little tweak to let that get by. And then this one starts to go. And as soon as you get this one, there's always going to be one that's going to hang up. As soon as you get that one to go past, duplicate the operation on the other side, and they go right down. So yeah, they don't have to go far, like I said. They're very shallow, the places in which those things sit into the rubber carb holders. Damn, maybe 12 millimeter or so, that's about it. So it ain't far. All right, let me get them tightened down and hook the rest of this stuff hooked up. And we got some other things to do first before we're gonna test fire it. Okay folks, where are we at? A couple days later after I filmed the last bits. Where we're at here is getting ready to test fire. Now, you saw in this video, I'm pretty sure I figured out what was wrong with the carbs. I hope that's the case, but I'm not 100% sure because I can't really identify why that would be an issue with that extra O-ring in there, but not supposed to be there as far as I can tell. So it's gone. And the carbs are back in as you saw. And what I did on another, I have a little video on this, it's kind of a subsidiary video to this one. I have changed all the coils out, all 4 of them, 2 back here and then the 2 in the front, with aftermarkets from Rick's Motorsports Electrics. Pretty easy job, just had to do some fiddling with some special, there's a kind of a special process you have to do for the spark plug cap ends. It's covered in that video, you can see it, or not, if you don't want to watch it, that's fine. And yeah, so that's what I did. Now, that's going to skew my results, obviously, because if I'm trying to identify what was causing this, which I believe was a fuel problem, naturally, if I screw with other stuff, then you're not going to, and it gets fixed, you know, it runs fine, then you're not going to know what the cause was. But I don't really care what the cause was at this point. I just want it to run right. And I can't put the body work all back on and the tank back on and all that, and then come back and do that work on the coils, because, you know, you got to get the tank out of the way to get these coils in the back. And so I figured I'd just do it all in this shot here. And like I said, if the end result is what I want, then that's fine. I'm also going to be changing out the regulator rectifier off camera. The only reason why I'm doing that is I'm changing over from whatever the cheapo style of that one electronically is, and I'm going to go to a MOSFET one because the MOSFET one runs cooler. The rectifier on there right now, it runs hotter than a freaking $2 pistol, so it's pretty damn hot. Yeah, so that's what I'm going to do on that. And I got no drips. I've already charged the carbs directly because, see, the problem with these old bikes is they don't have a fuel pump relay. They have a fuel cut relay, which is same thing kind of as a fuel pump relay. It is a relay that energizes the fuel pump, but it only do when the engine is cranking or running. And the logic behind that is if you crash and the engine shuts down but the ignition's still on, the fuel pump won't keep running and spill fuel everywhere, maybe cause a fire or what have you. So if you have empty carbs on these types of bikes and you hook up to the fuel pump side, which I'm hooked up to because I want to kind of duplicate the circumstances it would be under, you know, fuel from the tank, it takes forever to crank this thing up to get it to run because it's got to pump fuel all the way up. So I got those primed, ready to go. And so I'm going to set you up in the stand, Put you toward the back here, I think, and we'll fire up. And I can kind of tell from how it fires cold whether or not it's going to be better when it's hot, because generally speaking, if you got these things tuned right, as far as the slow jets and the slow screw settings, and by the way, I put these at 2 3/4. 2.5 is the stock setting. You know, this thing will start really quick when it's cold, and that has not been the case on this one. I've had to really enrich it and get the thing fired up. I mean, the Magno over there, you could leave that sumbitch sit for, well, weeks, and then just hit the starter, no enricher, no nothing, it'll fire right up. I mean, you don't need nothing to get that going because it's dialed in. So, all right, let's go ahead and get this one going and see how it sounds, at least on the lift here. All right, let's give her a shot. I was just about to turn the camera on here, the phone, whatever you want to call it, and got a phone call from customer for the XS11, so that's definitely coming up probably next week sometime. I'm looking forward to that. That'll be kind of fun to work on. Let's see, fuel. I got to turn the fuel on here, and like I said, the carb's already primed. So the thing is, the battery's pretty low because it's been sitting for so long. So I guess we'll see what happens with that. Run. I'll leave the enricher off for now and see what happens. I guess not. What the hell? All right, what did I do wrong? Guess what the dummy did? That'd be me. I switched the wires around on the coils. I had number 1s on number 3 and number 3 on number 1s. You know, the trigger and the power wire for the coil. Yeah, let's try that now. All right. Oh, come on. What the hell? I'm confused. Oh, I'll tell you what happened. See, that's the problem with this. It takes forever to get fuel up in the carbs, and they weren't all full. Yeah, see, again, can you see me? That's the problem with these fuel cut relays. I hate these damn things. The Magno over there, it's got a regular, I don't know if it's a relay, but it's just got a direct hookup to the fuel pump. You turn the key on, you hear it go brrr, it pressurizes the fuel system. If the carbs were empty, it would simply do that longer until it gets the resistance and shuts off. But this is, I hate these things, but yeah, that was a problem. I didn't fill the carbs up all the way. So let's try this again from start. Sounds like she's picking up quicker. there's a little bit of a, not a lag, but kind of a, it's not under load obviously, but I kind of use the, when you just crack the throttle, if it just gets a little bit, you know, doesn't want to go like that, and that's typical for something on the low side that needs to be either adjusted or changed. So I'm just going to crack them the slow screws out to 3 turns instead of 2 3/4, which is what my gut feeling was anyway, was 3 turns. So we'll try it then. You don't need to see that it's a prick. You got to get up inside here and reach up, do a classic reach around. You got to get up in there with a long screwdriver and just, because you saw what the screws were look like and where they were on the carbs. So I'll do that really quick off camera. We'll try it again, but like I said, I can't ride it right now because of the surgery I had. I mean, I can. I don't have any official restrictions, but I don't want to push it. So we'll get it to this point and make sure, if I'm happy with it on the lift, that's where we'll end this video, of course. But that's what happens with these damn, I think they're dumb, the fuel cut relays. You got to get the carbs completely full on these, and it takes a little time to do that, even with fuel pump pressure. And then the next thing you know, it doesn't want to run, and it's only running on 1 or 2 cylinders, and then boom, kicks right in like you saw. So that's what that was. So yeah, all right, so let me do that. We'll come right back. Ichabod got a little freaked by that backfire there, so he's hanging outside. You don't want to hang around here at all. Normally he does, but all right, I cracked them out 1/4 of a turn on each. All right, that's about all I can do on her right now until I take her out for a spin, which I'm not going to do, as I said, because I can't or won't. Well, what do you think? Maybe we fixed it? Solved it? I don't know. I know for sure that those little O-rings are not supposed to be in there on that slow screw in each carb. It's just being trying to be smarter than a Honda engineer, and this guy ain't. So we took those out. I took those out and put it back in, you know, normally, regularly, whatever you want to call it, properly. And yeah, she seems to snap up pretty good on throttle. It was rather anemic before, even sitting on the lift, but I kind of thought it was just the way it was. So I think it might work pretty well. Can't test it right now because of the surgery that I had, but I mean, I don't have any official restrictions except what my wife tells me I can't do, and you know, from the doctor, that is. But I'm going to take it easy on that because, you know, you take it out and you get the handlebars jerked out from you for some reason, and you know, it torques. I had surgery up here, so you know, you never know, it might tear something. I don't know. I don't want to take a chance, so we'll get a little healed up a little bit more. Hopefully the ancient GoPro will cooperate, and we'll see if we can get some video. I'll put it up on the channel as an update to see whether or not I fixed it. I hope I did. I hope you got something out of this video. You saw the dumb things that I did, especially with the switching the ignition wires. Like, I never do that. So if you did, like, subscribe, share, the whole deal. You know how it is. And always remember, don't just repair, restore. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one. Remember, the XS11 is coming in. That's going to be a fun project, so stay tuned for that. Bye-bye.